Years ago, I went to a pretty fair-sized church. There was about 900 people there. And so you can imagine the auditorium is very big. And they had a rule that if you're going to wait on the table, you're going to lead a prayer or something like that, you had to get out of your seat in the last stanza and start coming forward, because it was going to take you the whole thing just to get there. And they didn't want everybody just have to sit there and wait on you to come. And I thought it was kind of interesting and kept everything flowing. Now tonight we're going to be talking about an interesting subject matter, and the matter is children. Now you know good well, if we're talking about children, we're not talking to children, we're talking to adults. And how to raise their children, how to be people who have the right kind of a situation to be able to raise their children. And even though maybe those here who are older and their children are grown and out of their house, it still is important to discuss, because this is the kind of thinking you need to have even for your grandkids and great-grandkids. I don't know what you may have, and even great-great-grandkids. I don't know how far you go down the road. Let's take a look at it. Now turn over with me to 1 Timothy chapter 5 and verse 8, and listen to what it says. Chapter 5 and verse 8. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Now what he's saying here is that a person who does not consider providing for their family is wrong. Now here's the set law. The set law is that if a man shall not work or will not work, he shall not eat. I like that. If a man will not work, then he shall not eat. It's saying if a person refuses to work, they are saying that they are rejecting the responsibility even for themselves to be able to eat. Now this was shown to us also in Genesis 3, 15, 16, 17, something like that, where he told Adam that from now on he was going to have to eat by the sweat of his brow, meaning he was going to have to work for it. And this is extremely important for us to be able to see, because whatever goods we amass and how well we make our house or our home or our situation in life is because we choose to either work for it or we choose to not work for it. And so God wants you to see that work is truly godly and good. This is something you're responsible to do. And you're responsible to do this for your family. For those that you have said you were going to be responsible for. When, I don't know about you, but when I got married, we made vows. Now, today, I see people get married, and almost as fast as they get married, they get unmarried, what we call divorce. But the problem with that is they had made a vow. What is your word worth? What is your consideration worth? You are responsible to provide. The man especially. Now, if the man's not there, the man won't do it. Of course, the woman has to do it, but that's not her responsibility. Her responsibility is to be a nurturer and to care for the home and her family, to make sure that all the things that are necessary are taken care of. A man, though, builds a house for his wife. Therefore, he beautifies that house by becoming, when she becomes her utmost responsibility. She becomes the wife. And because she becomes the wife, she starts to add things to the home that make it a home and not just a house. The man may be satisfied with the things that he has, but when the woman comes, she adds a little plant here, a little frilly curtain there, those kind of things that make this home pleasing to the eye, and you can tell that a woman has touched it. The wife gives him children. Now listen, this is the reason why they call it matrimony, because when a woman is a matron, or she is she is pregnant, she's in the realm of where she is growing a child, she's going to become vulnerable to outside forces. And the man's utmost responsibility is to provide, support, and protect them. And they both take care of the family. But they have different rules, different roles, different responsibilities that they will be held accountable for in the day of judgment. Very important to see. And a man is going to act differently about things than a woman. It's not because he's dumb or she's just all emotional, but because that's the design of them. God designed that. And by the way, statistically, this is kind of interesting, statistically, nations that have a female as their prime minister or preacher, a president or leader, go to war more times than those nations that have a male as their leader. And I find that not surprising, because the woman is moved by emotion more than facts. However, it is the responsibility of each person to take on their role and do what is right before their God and provide for the family as a whole. The responsibility of the man is to lead his family. The main goal of the man is to lead his family spiritually. Now, isn't it interesting when we think about leading the family? We think, okay, I've got to do this and have a house for them. Is that all you have to do? Well, don't you have to have food for them? Oh yeah, I have to have food. What kind of food? Aren't you going to have food that is nutritious to them, help their bones grow and their nervous system grow correctly and everything? Aren't you responsible for that? Yes, I guess I am. I guess I'm to make sure all that happens, and yet we will forget that the man's main position is to lead his family to God. It's his job. He is to provide. He is to make sure. Now look, we've got three parts of our body. God tells us about this: the mind, the body, and the spirit. And he tells us that each one of those are important. You've got to have exercise for the body. You've got to be able to keep it in perfect working condition, like mine. And you've got to make it where that it is functioning well. You go to the doctor, you check it out and everything. I remember we had a little, when I was doing foster care, we had a little boy come in, and he would not speak to us. He wouldn't listen to us. He just wouldn't do anything but whatever he wanted to do. And the only things he would ever say was very loudly to say, no, don't, and stop. That's it. And finally I realized something is wrong here, and so I told my wife at the time, take him, when you go to the doctor tomorrow for, what's her name, make sure you have them check his ears. And what did they find out? They found that he had an infection. His ears were totally closed off, except for loud noises like, no, don't, and stop. And so they started giving him, he found that it had been in there probably well over a year's time. And he was only 2 years old. And so they started giving him antibiotics and everything. And one day he's walking past the TV. You know, you used to have these big console TVs that sat on the ground, you know what I mean? I mean, they were a chore to bring in and a chore to move, so you just left them where they were. And he had just ignored TV altogether. All it was pictures to him. And he was walking past the TV, and he all of a sudden turned around and looked at it, and he just sat down and sat there for a good 30 minutes without running around, which is unusual for him. And so we knew that this was working. A person who is in charge of their children has to try to make sure that those children's bodies are in good working condition. Wouldn't it be strange if you had a 30-year-old and you're still changing his diapers? You would take that 30-year-old to the doctor and say, "Doctor, what's wrong here? You know, we don't understand this." Well, of course you would. In the same way, if you have someone who is not using their mind correctly, if they're believing delusions of the world, if they're saying, like, for example, I heard this guy the other day, he was at work, and he was wearing some cat's ears and a tail, and he had a kitty litter behind the crates over there, in which he used. And the guys went and complained to the boss and said, "Boss, what are you going to do about this guy?" And he said, "Well," he said, "we really can't discriminate because he has this mental issue." Well, let me tell you something. His mind is out of order. I mean, it's not correct. This is why God tells us to renew your mind daily, to continue to work on yourself so that you can compare it to the gospel and what is right to think and what is right to do and what is right to act, and decide for yourself that it's correct and then follow it. So our responsibility as parents is also for the mind of the child. And each child is uniquely different. A child may be easily pliable. All you have to do is gripe at one and they'll break apart and start crying. And another one, they won't pay attention to nothing. You've got to really get pretty severe before they're even going to pay attention, even if they're beating you up. And then also, another part of it is the Spirit. You have got to have the children tuned into God. Someone asked me the other day, when do you think you ought to start teaching a child about God? And I said, at birth. From the time they come out of the womb, start teaching them about God. You can't teach them everything about God because they're just a little bitty yonker. And you've got to be able to see how they've got to be fed baby food, not meat and so on and so forth. You've got to teach them the songs, you know, about, remember Zacchaeus, and you know, and all that sort of stuff. That's how I learned about sycamore trees, was from that song. So your spirit has to be right, and everything has to be in balance for your life to be balanced. Your life has to be right before God, and the responsibility of the parents are to make sure they provide that balance for their children. And we see a large problem with that today because people are not taking care of their minds and they're allowing their bodies to do anything they want because they're not even thinking about where their spirit is plugged in. We see this over and over and over again. The police pull somebody over. They say, "I don't have to do that. You can't take me out of this car. Yeah, I don't have to give you my documentation, ma'am. It's a law. No, you don't have to do that. I'm not responsible for that. But you were speeding. I've got to give you a ticket for speeding. I wasn't speeding. You can't call me that way. You can't put me down like that." And we have raised an entitlement group of people. And the reason is because of their life is out of balance. You can see that. Anyone can see that. Everyone can see that. And the children deserve to live in a loving environment. They deserve to be in an environment where everybody is happy to be together. And let me tell you something, folks. If you don't like your spouse, it is your responsibility to change that. It is not your spouse's responsibility to change because you're not in control of them. You're only in control of yourself. And so what you do is you treat them like they should be treated. And when you do that, then they change and they respond or they leave. You've got to make sure that the home is a safe, happy place. And that means that when you're talking about them, your spouse, to your children, you're never putting them down. You're never going against the spouse's will. I remember how many times I would go and ask my father, I said, can I go do this? And he would say, what did your mother say? Because they were going to be in a union about this. They were going to have a unity in the way in which they presented this two-person front towards their children. It has to be a loving and safe environment for them to be able to grow up and try things. And they're going to try everything. They're going to try eating things that they shouldn't eat. My mother told me about me eating the cockroaches. I was going, okay, you're gonna go eat things that you shouldn't eat, and about her digging it out of there. And she said, I didn't want to touch that stupid cockroach, you know, and all these efforts that she had put into raising me. I remember one time I had very badly sprained my hand. What I'd done was I had fallen with my bike, and it was right after I'd gotten rid of the training wheels, and I was riding on a bike. It wasn't designed for riding without the training wheels. You know what I'm talking about? Because it's front pedaled and everything. And I fell off of there, and when I did, I rolled these fingers back all the way to my hand, and it really sprained my hand and my wrist really, really bad. Well, I had pretended to have problems all my life, and so my mother was kind of fed up with that kind of attitude, and she really didn't believe me that I'd hurt myself. And she put the bandage on there and everything, and she coddled me. And so I go out there into the garage, and the car was parked in front of the garage, the door's open. And I thought, I really want to sit on the fender of the car. I don't know why. But guys like to sit on the fender of the car. And so I got up there, but as I was trying to get up there, I couldn't get up with one hand. And so even though it hurt, I used my other hand. Boom! Out the door my mother comes saying, "You're not hurt. I didn't think you were." And she takes the bandage off and says, "Get in the house." We've got to have a front that is good for the children so they can learn where they can step and where they can't step. And test the boundaries. And you've got to help them understand those boundaries are permanent so that they won't be involved in drugs in later life. They won't be a drunkard. They won't be carousing around. They won't be doing things like that they shouldn't do. Okay, so that's our responsibility to provide and provide well for the family in all those areas, in the spirit, in the body, and in the mind. We have to teach them and help them. It's kind of interesting, the kids who come to school and they're passed along and they can't read. Their reading level is so bad it's pathetic. They can't do addition and subtraction, much less fraction and multiplication and so on. And come to find out, their parents don't teach them either. I remember that we always taught the kids when they were 1 and 2 and 3 how to read. Simple little books, pointing out the letters, helping them see them and understand it. In fact, my son, who was very mildly retarded, and he was incapable of really reading well and everything, we would want him to learn a scripture for class in church. And we'd take the scripture and write it out, and we'd cut every single part of it up, and we would set it out on the table, and we'd read it together. And he would read each one of them, and then I would take and turn the first one over, and we would start with that one, and then we'd read each one of them again. I'd turn the second one over, and we'd read, and before long he understood and knew that scripture by heart, because he didn't have to have it facing him to be able to understand it. There are some kids you can't teach them that way. He was just into puzzles, and so I knew this would help him. There are some kids that aren't that way. There are 3 ways that people learn. One is by listening. The other is by watching. And the other is by reading. Which is why I use pictures in mine. I talk, and I also use it where the people write. And they're able to catch more than if I just stood here and talked. Or, sat and talked. Now let's take a look over at Ephesians 6. And in Ephesians 6, we've got an interesting little statement here in verses 1 through 3. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. Listen what he says. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may go well with you, and that you may enjoy a long life on this earth. Now, isn't it interesting that God has to say the obvious? Obey your parents. You would think that would be considered normal and acceptable, and that that's exactly what would happen. Obey your parents. And bring them honor. Who wants to have children that are doing wrongly? What does the Bible teach? It says, obey your parents. Look how many times it says, obey your parents. Obey them. Over and over and over again it says that. And it says that because it is important. If you don't obey them, you're going to get into trouble. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get into things that you shouldn't get into. I remember I didn't do certain things because I was so scared my father would kill me when I got home. I know because there had been attempts, in my opinion. You've got to make sure that your children obey you. If they do not, you're not doing your part as a parent. And when you teach them properly, they will be honoring you. Parents must also discipline your children. In fact, over in one verse in Proverbs, which I didn't put down here, it says you can give your children a good beating. It won't kill them, but it may straighten them out. Well, some may be. And there are some children, all you have to do is send them to their room, and they're depressed for the whole day until they get out. Some children, it may take more. Like, the best way to do this is for you to be able to take them and make them write what they are supposed to do, not what they did wrong, but what they're supposed to do, like I will listen to my parents and follow their directions, 500 times. And, they're writing, and they're bored to death. They hear the TV in there, but they can't go watch it. And they're writing, they've asked you about 1,000 times, can I stop now? And you say, what number are you on? And they're not even at 100 yet. And so here comes time for supper, so you take and you say, put your things aside, let's eat a meal, and you'll go back to it after you get through with your meal. And so they'll take a long time to eat, so that they'll, not have to go back to their work. But you go collect their plate, and you say, you can have this in the morning. Since you didn't see fit to eat this evening, get back to work. Well, it doesn't take but one time of that to make believers out of the kids so that they will do exactly what you say. A person should not have to holler at their children and say it 3 or 4 times. I've even seen parents count. If you don't stop that, I'm going to give you a whipping. 1, 2, 3. I told you to stop it, or I'll give you a whipping. Well, look, the kid already knows better. He knows exactly what you're going to do. Let him know the punishment will be swift and painful. Whether it be painful in writing, whether it be painful in exclusion, whether it be painful in his position, wherever it may be. It used to be that teachers were able to discipline children, but today we have a problem with that because parents think their children are so perfect that they don't need any correction. And they won't even accept anything a teacher says about that. I remember when I was a kid, and usually the vice principal would apply the Board of Education to the seat of learning many times because I was kind of hard-headed. So we have to be able to discipline our children, and the reason for that is so that you will be able to honor them. That doesn't mean you've got to beat on them or treat them wrongly, but rather that you're doing this lovingly, but they have to be disciplined or they will not learn the answers. And when they don't learn the answers, you're not helping them out. Because this will come out later in life. Correct your son, and he shall give you rest. Yes, he shall give delight to your soul. That's Proverbs 29:17 that I gave you for a look at what is being said there. God commands you to correct your children, to make sure that they are doing what is right, and they'll bring honor to you. People who see children who are quiet and in control are amazed. And people who see children like that come up and talk to them, and they'd say, yes ma'am, no ma'am, thank you ma'am, or whatever. And they're really pleased to have you over to the house because your child sits down and doesn't go rummaging around like I did when I was a kid, and come back with my face all cut up because I'd used the guy's razor. Kids can be pretty stupid. And you want to do this because you will enjoy a long life on earth. You're not going to have to punish them as a teenager. Can you imagine? The other day I was watching a video, and this guy had 4:30 in the morning. These 3 kids walked up to the door. They hired police, and then they started kicking the door in. And when they kicked the door in there and masked, and they've got their hoodies on, and they've got guns. And the guy inside shot all 3 of them. 2 of them died when they got to the hospital. 1 died on the lawn. You know what the parents want to do? They want to sue him for killing their children instead of holding their children responsible for their actions. Unfortunately, can you imagine what these children would have been like had they been capable of learning and doing? My goodness. We've got great people in our history who were capable of doing it at a young age. They were teaching Latin and Greek in high school. We don't have that today. We still got remedial math and basic English and stuff like that. So what you want to do is enjoy your life, and the only way to enjoy your life is to have children who treat you well, and they train up children who teach you well, and your grandparents can enjoy their life without you coming over and kicking them and causing them problems because you're not very good person. You're pushing your own way. We want to have fun, to be with a happy family. We want to be with people who are in control of themselves. So if you obey your parents, if the children obey their parents, then you're going to enjoy a long life because they'll bring you honor all the days of their life. And then number 3, let's take a look at Proverbs chapter 23 and verse 22. Proverbs 23 and verse 22. Excuse me. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother. Get wisdom, discipline. Oh no, I'm sorry. So, when she is old. Okay, so he tells us, listen to your father and mother. One of the hardest things you can do is listen to someone. A lot of times when you're listening, you're thinking about your response to what they're saying. You're not really taking in what they're saying at all. You're listening, but you're not hearing. If she's talking or he's talking, and you're letting it go between your ears and thinking, when will they shut up? I'm tired of this stuff. I'm ready to change it. I don't want to be involved in it. So listen to your father and mother. They're going to teach you things about how to handle your money. Parents ought to teach their kids about that. Most kids don't even know how to write a check or balance a checkbook or know how much money's in the bank or check their credit card and see what's been bought and what needs to be paid and so on. The parents are doing all of that. They don't know how to cook. Had never learned. I can't imagine what they're making here, but they sure look cute, don't they? In their little outfits. And they're making a mess. You know what? It is always harder on the adult than it is on the kid. When my father would say, go get me a 3/4 inch open-end wrench. And I go over and look at him. I bring this one, and he would be so frustrated with me. And he would get out from underneath the car. He would go over and get the wrench out, and he would show me, you see here what says 3 with a line and 4 in it. And it's open, it's not closed. The other end's closed, but this end's not. Then this is what I need. So give it to me when I get back underneath there. Well, it's a lot harder for him to do that than it is to just go get it himself and not have to ask me, knowing I won't do It is important for us to teach our children to do things and to be able to figure it out on their own. A child does something, they mess up, they destroyed something. How would you change that? How would you make it better? How would you do it the next time? You said this, and it didn't go well. How could you say that where it would work better? But if you don't listen to the other person, the conversation you're having next is not going to fit in with what they said. You've got to listen not to just your father, but also to your mother. And that means when they take you to church, and let me tell you something, kids don't want to go to church. They don't want to have to put on those funny clothes. They don't want to have to sit still. They don't want to have to quit talking when the prayer's going on. They don't want to put money in the collection plate. They don't want to do these things. They need to learn these things so that they can be appropriate in front of their God. They desperately need to know that there is an authority over their actions here on earth. And do not provoke your children. Don't destroy them. This is what Colossians 3:24 says. Don't provoke them to wrath. Fathers shouldn't make their children so angry. If they're making them angry, the father's not in control either. Can you see that? And he's teaching his kid how to get angry all the time. How to handle all the world's problems with anger, not with solutions. Fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath. And it's so easy to do. Because fathers are so big. Mothers are not. Sometimes when the child's 15, 16 years old, they're much bigger than the mother. If they've not been taught from birth to be good to their mother by their father, then they will murder their mother. And we've seen that happen many times throughout history. Sadly enough. What we want to have is children who listen to us, and we want to be parents who talk well to them. So, the third thing, or the last thing is, do not despise your parents in their old age. Don't despise them. Consider it. Listen to this. A child who is allowed to be disrespectful to his parents will not have true respect for anyone, not even themselves. They may think they're entitled, but they really don't respect themselves even. They just want to push you until you will turn away from them and do what they command. Egotistical, entitled people. So it's in your best interest to train these children properly. Provide for them well, teach them to obey you, and teach them to listen to what you have to say. Because what you're going to say is wisdom straight from God. Now look at this mother. No matter how old you get, you will always be the queen of my heart. Proverbs 23, listen to your father who gave you life, and 23:22, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Why do you think he said your mother when she is old? Because mothers usually live longer than fathers. And people sometimes lock them away in nursing homes and forget about them. When I was working for a nursing home, I saw that many times. Very, very sad. We're raising children who love God. We show them the nature that God has made. We show them the laws that God has designed. We tell them how much God loves them, and we train them with that same love here on earth. That's who we are. People raising children for God. If you're not raising children for God, you're going about it wrongly. If you're not right with God, now's the time. If you need help, you want to pray about this, now's the time. If you need to be baptized and you're not baptized, now's the time. Don't wait for tomorrow. Tomorrow may never exist. Make sure you do what is right. Make sure you follow your Father. Whatever your needs are, you come forward as we stand and sing this song together.